At the start of this year, Mickey Mouse, the beloved cartoon character from Walt Disney, fell into the public domain, and mere hours after giving folks a rundown of how it all worked, right on schedule, my social media feeds were filled with dozens of horror-themed Mickey Mouse cash grabs. Look, I get it. Last year, a company threw together an ultra-low-budget Winnie the Pooh slasher film and somehow managed to make off with a few $1,000,000, but do we really need to rinse and repeat the same formula every year? If horror is your thing, fine, no harm, no foul, but there are other characters than Mickey and other genres to play in. So to help give you a little bit of variety, here are 5 hidden gems in the public domain that you can start using for your ultra-low budget knockoffs today. Number 1. The Australian Catman. In 1939, the world was introduced to the caped crusader Batman in Detective Comics, who quickly became an overnight sensation. Wanting a bit of that success for themselves, just a few months later, Frank Temerson's Continental magazine launched an eerily similar-looking crime fighter by the name of Catman, because sure. In the years following, Catman would go on to have his own less blatantly lifted continuity, which actually isn't half bad, following a private detective, David Merriweather. The character eventually fell into the public domain and is now free for anyone to adapt. For the past year, I have been doing so by producing my own original cartoon with the character. The thing about Catman and the kitten, his later sidekick, is that although it was popular overseas, in America, sales and interest was always a bit lackluster, and by 1946, the comic went out of publication. When wartime rules prevented American imports, Australian publishers decided to just skirt copyright altogether and produce their own unauthorized version. Much like its predecessor, the comic cribbed the costume and ditched the backstory. Writers established their own continuity with darker and grittier storylines where Catman is less detective and more ruthless mercenary. So if you want an excuse for a hard-boiled black and white action movie, why not take a knockoff's knockoff and make a knockoff of your own? Number 2, The Land of Oz. L. Frank Baum's American fairy tale is way more than just a catchy musical. It all started as a children's novel released in the year 1900. A Kansas gal named Dorothy Gale and her dog Toto get swept away by a twister and land in a world of whimsy and wonder. She, of course, sets out on the yellow brick road to Emerald City in search of the Wizard of Oz, who supposedly has the power to get her back home. Along the way, she befriends a scarecrow who wishes for a brain, a tin woodsman who desires a heart, and a cowardly lion in search of courage. There's a wicked witch and a good witch, creepy flying monkeys. If you've seen the movie, then you know the deal, but you might not know that it doesn't end when Dorothy gets back home. So wild was the success of the original book that the author penned over a dozen sequels. Counting follow-up authors who continued writing on behalf of Baum's estate, there are now 26 stories in the series. If you want more fantasy, there's an entire series just sitting there that anyone can adapt and expand on. So dive into the books and have fun. Number 3, Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack is from the Victorian era of English folklore, sort of like a British Bigfoot. In 1837, a girl named Mary Stevens was walking along the streets of London when she was attacked by a devilish creature. Humanoid in appearance, but with a terrifying face, sharp claws, and blood-red eyes. Miss Stevens' screams managed to scare the beast off, but in the following days, more and more reports emerged of the freakish fiend. Several eyewitnesses observed him attacking a carriage and then escaping by leaping over a 9-foot wall, all while cackling like a madman. The British press dubbed the villain Spring-Heeled Jack because of his seeming abilities to leap from rooftop to rooftop, and over the decades was featured in penny dreadfuls, which were sort of like proto-pulp comics in the UK. There, he gained pointed ears, sharp metallic claws, a mysterious black cloak. Sightings and reports of spring-heeled Jack continued for decades, spreading to other parts of England, and to this day, people argue about who he actually was, with theories ranging from the pragmatic to the paranormal. The folklore surrounding him provides ample opportunity for Victorian horror, or even the exploration of hoaxes, and how exaggerated reporting often leads to mass hysteria, assuming you think it was a hoax. Number 4, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. If there's one thing Jurassic Park fans love to do, it's complain about Jurassic Park movies. I'm a big fan of the original novel, which the flicks were based on. It's way scarier, and it plays up the existential dread in lieu of mindless action, except for the ending, which sets up a sequel that I didn't quite dig as much. You might not know that The Lost World gets its namesake from a 1912 novel by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes. He also wrote a book about dinosaurs. The story begins with a journalist named Ed Malone who learns about a dude named Professor George Challenger, who claims to have found evidence of prehistoric life still existing in a remote Amazon jungle. Malone's got this girl that he's really into, and so he decides to try and impress her by joining Challenger and other adventurers on the expedition. There's a dude named Lord John Ruxton who single-handedly ended the slave trade in the Amazon. He lugs around this big rifle that has notches in it for every slaver that he stopped, which is totally cool. Eventually, they find their way to a higher plateau in the Amazon basin where they discover a world of dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. It then becomes a daring survival story. They kidnap a pterodactyl, and then there's like this brief King Kong-style finale. If you're out there thinking that Jurassic Park needs better movies, then just pick up the predecessor and go for it. Yes, the original contains several outdated stereotypes and scientific inaccuracies. Boy, howdy are there a lot of those. It was written in 1912, but the point of the public domain is that you can take these works and use them as a creative springboard for your own interpretations and transformations. If there's something you don't like about the original story, change it. Make the story better in your own way. That's how folklore works. The next great dino epic could come from you. Finally, number 5, the Red Bee. He's a superhero who uses bees. Why not? From the Golden Age publication Hit Comics, in the struggling metropolis of Superior City, Oregon, the local corrupt politicians rule with an iron fist. Fed up with the injustice, the city's populace organize to demand change, but without hard evidence of wrongdoing, the district attorney's hands are tied. In an effort to upend the criminal rule, the DA's lowly assistant, a nobody named Rick Rowley, decides to throw on a mask and become a hero. His costume has transparent wings that enable him to fly, and his main weapon is an army of trained bees that he uses to exact vengeance, including one special bee named Michael that he keeps inside his belt buckle for emergencies. This is all real, I'm not making it up. Rowley also has above average athleticism, hand-to-hand combat skills, and if things get too dicey, he has a gun. Now you might think that such a dumb, obscure character has like no place in modern storytelling, but DC Comics picked him up not too long ago and made their own iteration to success, and you can too. That's the point of the public domain, right? It's not about just grabbing popular characters like Mickey or Winnie whenever they become available and then like haphazardly throwing them into half-baked horror ideas. At its heart, public domain is about iterating on the source material and finding new ways to make these old stories work. It's a wild and wacky sandbox out there, and the possibilities are endless. So have fun. Take care. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you've got an idea for a story, they can help you get it online. Start by choosing from one of their many stunning website templates and then use their new Fluid engine to customize it to your specific needs. Whether you're focusing on text, images, video, or audio, they've got you covered. You can use member areas to build an online community, and if you've got something to sell, their online storefront is simple to set up and takes the headache out of payment processing. You can get started building a website today by going to squarespace.com and starting a free trial. If you like the experience and want to launch your site in full, head over to squarespace.com/AustinMcConnell and you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.